welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books, and welcome to my favourite books of 2019 so far. I love June because of the month. I love June's videos because I get to pick the books that I'm going to be, sort of like books that I've enjoyed this year so far, how I'm getting on with my reading resolutions, etc, etc. And I've got 10 books here which have been my favourite books of the year so far. Looking at the 10 books, I'm really pleased with the sort of range in which my favourites involved. We've got non-fiction in there, we've got children's books, we've got literary fiction, we've got classics, and I feel like that's just a real representation of what I'm reading these days, and the fact that I can get 10 favourite books from a whole host of genres. I just think, well done, Lauren. These books are in no, that really hurt. These books are in no particular order apart from the last two, which are my favourite books that I've read this year so far. I wouldn't be able to pick out of the two, but yeah, those two are my favourite books. But apart from the rest of them are all books that I've loved and read this year. I've been in my top 10 of books this year, and I'm going to start with the 4 books that I don't have here with me, and that's because I listened to them on audio or because I borrowed them from the library. Those are the reasons. I listened to it on audio or I borrowed it from the library. And the first book is a book that I listened to on audiobook, and it is a children's book, and it is a book called Pages & Co, Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James, who is also a booktuber. She hasn't made videos for a while, but she is still a booktuber. I love this book. It is so cozy and cute and comfy and like popping on a lovely pair of slippers, and I just enjoyed it so much. It's the first in a series. I cannot wait to read the second, and I just loved it so much. You follow Tilly, who lives with her grandparents, who own a bookshop called Pages & Co, and Tilly and her grandparents are able to travel within books. So you're reading a book about a girl travelling within books, and she visits places such as, she visits books such as Anne of Green Gables, which was a story I wasn't familiar with, and you hear about her grandma's favourite books, which is Pride and Prejudice, and she has chats with Elizabeth Bennet, and it's just such an amazingly original and wonderful idea, executed so beautifully that children and adults alike can enjoy it. It just made me feel so cosy and comfy. It's actually set over, excuse me, itchy nose, it's actually set over October half term, and I believe it came out just in time for October half term, but I listened to the audio of it this year and I just loved it. I just found it so wonderful and cute, and thought it was amazing. So if you like reading books about books, which I do, then you would definitely love this book. It is just so adorable. So that was my first book, Pages & Co, Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. The second one is, the next 3 are all books that I got out from the library, and the first one is in a similar, well, it's a children's book again. It is When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit by Judith Kerr. This is a book that I only read for the first time this year. I can't believe it. Judith Kerr was a big sort of part of my reading growing up, in terms of her picture books and Mog, and that she was always very present, and I always, whenever I see any illustrations from any of her books, I know it instantly that's a Judith Kerr book. And I read When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit for the first time, which is a semi-autobiographical book about a character, Anna, who's having to flee Germany in the Second World War, and it's just it's told, so you're learning about what it was like for a Jewish family to flee Germany from a children's perspective. So the sort of like odd things that children have noticed, and like maybe cover-ups that the parents have done, and her life sort of moving around as an immigrant. And I loved it. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe I hadn't read it before then, and I'm actually going to buy myself a copy because I just loved it so much that I definitely think it was something that I would revisit. It was just so beloved to me, and it just made me feel, it made me, it gave me the feeling, it gave me a real nostalgic feeling of reading when I was younger as well, and how much I loved reading when I was younger. And yeah, I just loved it, and I thought Anna was just so, like, if she's, I can completely believe that she's based on Judith Kerr, because she was just so sassy and fun, and like really delivered some hard information through a children's book. I just thought it was absolutely amazing, and I absolutely loved it. Loved it. The third book is which one should we go for first? These two are both, well, they're similar in that they were both shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. So I'll go for Ordinary People first. So Ordinary People by Diana Evans is a book that was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. And I really loved it. It is not a happy book at all. It's about two failing relationships. It's set at the time, it's set in London, just as the Obama administration has started. You're learning about two two failing relationships. One couple, the father of the man in that relationship has just died, and he's coming to terms with that. And then in another relationship, they've moved into this house that the woman in the relationship does not feel very comfortable in, and they're sort of like the sort of just many problems in these relationships, but I really loved it, and it had a lot going on in it. There's lots of like, so as well as it being like a sort of what it was like for people to live in London at that time, there's a bit in there about like gang crime and things like that, but there's also like a really spooky bit where the woman who lives in this new house is really uncomfortable, and she believes her daughter's been possessed by an evil spirit, and it's just got loads thrown at it, and I really felt that I loved that. I loved that it was really pacey, even though you don't follow a massive bit of time. So yeah, so I really enjoyed it. It didn't win. It was the one I wanted to win, or the next one I'm going to mention. But I guess in my heart, I never maybe thought it was going to win. But the one I wanted to win, the other one I thought was going to win and did win was An American Marriage by T.R.E. Jones, which is also one of my favourite books of this year. This is another sad book, guys. You follow a couple and they are returning to the chap's parents' house, and they stay in a motel near his parents' house, and they have an argument, and the guy goes off to get a bucket of ice in the motel. While he's getting a bucket of ice, he meets a woman who he helps carry something to her room, and later on that night that woman is raped, not by this guy, but she falsely accuses him, and he ends up going to prison for it. And then from then on you are witnessing the sort of the destruction of Celestial and Michael, I believe his name is, their relationship falling apart in between letters while he's in prison and while her sort of career is thriving. She's an artist and she makes dolls and things like that, and she ends up getting with a friend of theirs, and yeah, it's just so heartbreaking that they're having to it's a sort of what's going on with the American justice system and things like that, and just how their relationship, you're just seeing it fall apart, and then when he gets out, it's just a sort of realization of how things can never really be the same again, and they do try, and it doesn't work out, and there were just parts in it which just actually like hurt my heart, because it was just so sad. So yeah, that is another favorite book of mine. So, and all of the next books I have here with me now. So the first one is a recently read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Now, I read this when I was much younger. We studied Wide Sargasso Sea for my AS level or A level, so either way I was either 16 or 17, and we studied that. So before that we had to read Jane Eyre, and I sort of remember maybe slogging through it and actually being able to keep up with the plot, because a lot of my problem is when I'm reading classics is I'm not always able to keep up with the plot because there's a lot of bump around it, isn't there? But this, on rereading it, I absolutely loved it, and I really loved Jane. I don't feel like I ever really connected with her when I was younger because my views weren't the same as they are now, and I just sort of remember sort of just labouring through it really. But yeah, I really loved Jane. I really loved the plot of this. I feel like my 32-year-old self is able to see how bloody daft and stupid Mr. Rochester is, which is a shame that she actually ends up with him because he's just so weird. But yeah, I really like Jane's sassiness and her headstrongness, and yeah, I just really loved reading this, and I was surprised that when I was going through my list of favourite books of this year that I was very keen to get Jane Eyre put on there. So yeah, very much enjoyed it. Big old guy, but definitely worth it. The next one is a non-fiction book, and it is Turning the Tide on Plastic by Lucy Siegle. This is a book that I read right at the beginning of the year. I think I might even have picked it up on like New Year's Day or something. Lucy Siegle is a journalist, and she also appears on The One Show, which is a programme in the UK, like a magazine show. And this is her and talking about the effect that plastic is having on our planet, and in no uncertain terms sort of lays it all out, but also doesn't lay it all out in a super scientific way. Like, I was able to understand everything that was going on in this book. And then she also gives a sort of like action plan of 8 steps that you're able to do to reduce your plastic count. And I am going to make a series about this. I filmed the introduction for this. I'll link that introduction down below. But then there's 8 steps, all beginning with R. And they are, I mean, let me read them out to you. record, reduce, replace, refuse, reuse, refill, rethink and recycle. And it was the first time I'd ever really addressed the fact that recycling should be our last resort. I'd always been very much encouraged to recycle, and that when me and Mercedes went to a chat that she did at Cambridge Literary Festival last year, and I'd never heard anyone mention that recycling should be our last resort, and we should be reusing things and rethinking the way we're using things, and buying things that don't have plastic in, and etc, etc. And I just feel like this is a super accessible book. Definitely changed my thoughts on plastic and made me want to be much more active, and I was forever referencing this to people, and I've lent it to quite a lot of people as well, but very much enjoyed it. Thought it was very important and would recommend. Then the next book is a Daphne du Maurier book. Hurrah! A Daphne du Maurier book. I haven't read any Daphne du Maurier or any new Daphne du Maurier for quite some time, so I was delighted to read The Scapegoat for my Patreon book club earlier this year. Now I actually, when I finished this, I gave it 4 stars, but on reflection I thought about it for a long time afterwards. I enjoyed it so much I ended up watching a ITV adaptation about it, of an adaptation of this book, and I ended up giving it 5 stars, and I keep thinking about it and I feel like it's really fun, and like a lot of Daphne du Maurier's books, I'm looking up there because that's where I keep them, I give them 5 stars. I'm just thinking, is there any up there that didn't get 5 stars? I don't think The Breaking Point got 5 stars, which is a short story collection, but yeah, I upgraded this from a 4 to a 5 after thinking about it. So this book, you are following 2 men, one is English and one is French, and they meet at a railway station. And they are the image of each other, and they are called John and Jean, and when John, English John, wakes up in the morning, he realises that Jean has stolen his life. Is that the right way round? Yes, John has stolen his car and his identity and ran off, and John quickly gets embroiled in Jean's lifestyle, and yeah, I just really liked it. I just thought it was really like tricksy, and I really liked all the characters in there. He's got quite a special bond with what would be his daughter, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was quite a jaunt, and the ending was quite sort of action-packed, and I really loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I would also, like, if you're into Daphne du Maurier and you've been sort of like skirting around, like reading Rebecca thinking, oh I like that, reading My Cousin Rachel thinking, oh I like that, like I think you'll get as much joy out of The Scapegoat as you did out of those two. So yes, very much enjoyed it. The next one is a book which I feel like perhaps is going to be appearing on quite a few people's favourite books this year, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This has been quite hyped on the old booktube, and I very much enjoyed this. I read this when I went away to Wales earlier this year, and this is a story following a band called Daisy Jones and the Six, which actually originally started as The Six, and then Daisy Jones joins them, and it's based on Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. Now, what I will say is that it's written in a way of which I've never read a book before, so it stayed with me for that reason mainly. But it's told in like transcription, as if they're being interviewed for a magazine or something. And I really love the way that some characters remember events in the way that other people don't, and particularly with like decisions with the band, and particularly with some couples and things like that. And I just really liked it. It felt like reading like The Enemy when I was younger. But I was really invested in all of the characters and their what they were up to and things like that, and yeah, I loved it. And a lot of people have said to me that the audiobook of this is fantastic because it is narrated, it's a cast narration. There's a proper word for that, but I don't know what it is now, but it's yeah, I'll say there's a cast that narrate every single different voice, which I think would be amazing. So what I have been doing is if I've been loving a book, I've been rereading it by listening to the audiobook the following year. So looking forward to listening to the audiobook of this in 2020. Futuristic aim, 2020, imagine. I remember the millennium. And then the last 2 books, as I said, are both favourite books of mine, probably the 2 most favourite books of mine this year. The first one is Lowborn by Kerry Hudson. This is a memoir of Kerry Hudson's life growing up, getting away and returning to Britain's poorest town. So Kerry Hudson she says here that she's proudly working class, but she was never proudly poor, and she lived a life full of poverty when she was younger, with her mother sort of moving from town to town, like all over different ends of the country, from Canterbury to Scotland, back to Glasgow, back down to Norfolk, like all over the place. And you are learning about her actions when she was in this place when she was younger, and what she had to do to sort of get by when she was younger with her mother, and then you are following a thread of her revisiting these places, and it's just really beautifully done, and you really feel her anxiety and her nervousness about revisiting these places where she's got some really tough memories associated to, and not always tough memories, like some nice memories as well, but yeah, you just really feel like you're there with her. And I really love the fact that she's a really chatty person, and she'll just talk to people like in places where she used to live and say, I used to live here, do you think it's better than it used to be? And like then they'll get chatting about programs that are going on and things like that, or someone will say, no, it's much worse now, like the high street's completely closed down, etc, etc. And yeah, it was just really she was just really she was just going for it in terms of like finding out what the places that she used to live in are like now, and asking questions that potentially people would avoid asking. And I just really loved it. I read it and automatically lent it to the woman I share an office with. She loved it too. This is one I'm definitely going to listen to the audiobook of again, because I just adored it so much. As I said, that's one of my favourite things to do, to sort of re-get it. But yeah, I would, and this was sort of like eye-opening to me as well. I remember when I was young, like, I'm very fortunate. I come from a working class background, but we've never been in poverty or even nearly on the edge of poverty at all. And this book sort of reminded me of, there was a girl in my school when I was in there was a girl in my class when I was at school in primary school, and I remember in her lunchbox every day she used to have a handful of crisps, and I always used to say to my mum, oh, isn't it weird that has a handful of crisps every day, she doesn't have a packet of crisps? And like, it didn't even cross my mind that was because her family were unable to afford a pack of crisps per child per day, like that they were having to like share out crisps. And now like it just breaks my heart, and I know that there's so much wealth in this country, but similarly there's so much poverty in this country, and this really opened my eyes to it, and I think it's fantastic. And I think it's really important that a lot of people should read this book and realise that the distribution of wealth in this country is just fucking shit. So yeah, so that is one of my favourite books of the year. And then my other favourite book of the year is The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. This is a proof copy. It's absolutely massive, and this is a whole life story of a character called Cyril Avery, basically told from the moment his mother falls pregnant with him, all up until his death. That's not a spoiler, this is his life, like you find out the whole thing. And he has had a life, like, let me tell you, you follow all of his relationships. He's a gay chap, and you follow sort of like difficulties he's had. Difficulties, I mean, his fucking partner dies in this because as a result of a homophobic attack. And this is literally like peaks and troughs, a whole roller coaster of emotions. I've been reading this in the bath, crying about what's been going on, happy tears and sad tears. And yeah, this was my first John Boyne. No, it wasn't. I keep saying that. I'd actually read The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, but hadn't sort of made the link that this was John Boyne and that was John Boyne. And I then went on to read A Ladder to the Sky, which is another one of his adult novels, which I adored too. But yeah, I really love this. Another one I'm going to revisit by audiobook next year. But just thought it was amazing. And if you're looking for a sort of investment piece, I feel like this is a great holiday read, because you can sort of pick it up and put it by whenever you're going, because it's a whole life. It's really super pacey, but I'm not a big plot fan. Like, plot is not my #1 thing that I go for, but in this book, because it's so in-depth, and because you love Cyril so much, I was completely like whisked away by the plot of it all, and I just thought it was amazing. So that is another one of my favourite books from the year so far. So those are my 10 favourite books of the year so far. Would be super duper interested to hear if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. Also want to hear what some of your favourite books of the year are. Very interested. If you've got a booktube channel and you have made a video about your favourite books of the year so far, please link me a link. Well, don't even link it down below, just say, hi Lauren, I've made a video of that, go and check it out. And I will go and check it out, because I love to hear people's favourite books of the year so far. Those are mine. I hope you're all doing really well, and I will see you all again soon for another booktube video.